Welcome to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, brought to you by Pilma. This podcast helps lead lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Here is your legal marketing expert and host, Ken Hardison.
Well, hello, everyone. This is Ken Hardison, and welcome to another episode of Grow Your Law Firm. And today we have the pleasure and honor of having Steve Nober, the founder and CEO of Consumer Attorney Marketing Group, better known as CAMG. And Steve was one of my speakers last week at the Pilma Super Summit down in, it was supposed to be down in New Orleans, but now it's up. It was up in Washington, D.C. because of the hurricane. And he gave a great speech on the first day and had a lot of good comments about it. And I wanted, after hearing him, I asked him, I said, would you mind being on my podcast? And he said he would be welcome to do so. So thank you for doing that for us.
No, thank you. Thanks, Ken. And for those that were at the show last week, great to see everybody. And for those that missed it, it was really nice to be back in a conference. Ken and his team pulled it off. It was great. So,
and we did it safe. We did it safely too. Everybody had to have vaccines and had to wear masks.
You did. We're home now. It's been over a week. No COVID. Knock on something. We're all healthy and good. So. Yeah. Appreciate it.
So just tell us a little bit about yourself and how, because people that don't know you, you have built a conglomerate. I mean, just a multi-million-dollar business, and it entails from A to Z, everything on marketing for law firms. I mean, you're a one-stop agency. You even do intakes. I mean, you do everything. So tell us about how you got into this, and then just tell us all the different things that you do.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Ken. So without boring your audience, it goes back, the most relevant experience I had before we started Consumer Attorney Marketing Group, which was now about 12 years ago. I used to run the largest media buying agency in the country that buys time on TV for the infomercials, right? For the half-hour programs that we all see, like the ShamWow Guy, the Magic Bullet, the Proactive, P90X, the workout program. You know, I think I bought the dehydrator when I was a teenager in college. I don't know. Anyways, all that crazy stuff. And I did that for about 5 years, running those campaigns. And the thing that most people don't know about those marketers, as crazy of an industry as it is they're dealing in pennies. And so they measure everything they do. And it's primarily TV, and then later digital kicked in and a lot of other things. But they measure it all because they can't afford to run marketing anywhere where it's not working, because they're selling, something for $20 or $40 and trying to upsell. So the whole process, it's Moneyball, which I've used, I think, Ken, in the opening of sometimes your conference years ago, right? Was a clip from Moneyball. It's really tracking tons of metrics, making really smart decisions, and then changing up your marketing in real time. And so when I left Mercury Media, we started CAMG shortly after. And that was the principle that hasn't changed in 12 years. We, every division, everything we do is measured at a level that I think most firms are not used to if they're using an agency today. And we share all of it, and we, have dialogue and collaborate, and we make changes super quick with the philosophy that, I think most marketing in the country, Ken, is, half of what most people are doing isn't working or isn't as efficient as it could be. It doesn't mean they're doing anything wrong. But a lot of marketing doesn't work, and some does. So marketing is really, my thought always has been, and I don't think it can be questioned, it's about probability, right? And so if it's about probability, then you can increase probability. And I give lots of examples. I used the Monty Hall example at your show. You can talk about jury selection. Like, there's things we do in life that we do, not because it guarantees us anything, but it improves probability so much that we'd never give it up. So the idea behind our marketing is, marketing's not 100%, guaranteed. If it was, can you imagine? I mean, it'd be amazing, right? So the next best thing is to use metrics and really measure everything, no matter what you're doing: SEO, digital, SEM, social, TV, radio, et cetera, outdoor. So that's what we do. And we try and be really analytic at a level that most people aren't used to, and make those decisions with our clients. So that's how we got there. We started, we have 7 divisions now, right? We started doing marketing, primarily TV, as you know, back in the day, and then and full creative production. We started answering phone calls because we thought law firms, more on the mass tort side, Firms weren't set up to answer those mass tort calls, especially after hours, or doing the right kind of intake. People would sit on hold, or calls would get abandoned. And then we realized law firms they weren't best set up to do contract processing for mass tort cases all around the country. And so we started a contract processing group to get the fee agreements, the med record forms, long form questionnaire, all those things, as secondary packaging service for law firms. And then we started a phone division because we have these thousands of phone numbers all over the country that are active. So vanities and phone and the technology and routing. We bought a med records business in Pensacola, Florida. I know, it's crazy. And the latest division, which we just announced, we can talk about more, but a couple weeks ago, is our new public relations, our PR division, to try and innovate and turn PR upside down on its head. So we started in TV, and then we picked up SEO and digital probably 5 or 6 years ago, and now we do, and you can imagine an insane amount of digital work, but we measure it all. So we're really agnostic. At the end of the day, whatever's working best, we're helping law firms do both. Half our business is probably mass torts, right? Mostly national, and half is local single event, like we talked about at your conference last weekend. It's helping firms with their branding, their local marketing, decreasing case costs, getting innovative, how to compete in a super competitive market with monster big spenders in every city. And we think we've come up with a bunch of programs that really help attack those issues to be competitive in your market. So it's probably a long answer to your question, but that's CAMG today. Yeah.
Yeah, but as big as you are, it takes a long answer. I mean,
Thank you.
Because I've watched you. We started Pilmo about 11, 12 years ago. So we started about the same time. And I got to say, you've grown a hell of a lot more than Pilmo has, I can tell you.
Well, I mean, I tell you, it's thank you for that. It's sort of my personality. I feel like our company mirrors my personality. I get very, I grew up, I was hyperactive and ADD, and I was everything you could imagine, like most of us guys are. And for me to be engaged, like this innovation, this continual, how can we find opportunities in the market to improve or change? Like, it just never stops. And so I think all these divisions, like we keep vertically integrating. It's like McDonald's, buying the farms and growing the cows and the milk and the meat. And so, it's helped us. I think it helps us offer a service that we can control best practices in all those divisions, as opposed to a law firm that might be outsourcing and then managing different vendors and different levels of quality. So that was our dream. Yeah.
Steve, I dealt with a lot of vendors over the years, and I had a lawyer come and complain to me about a vendor. It won't you, but he said, I'm just not getting any cases. And I talked to the vendor. He says, listen, he's getting like 300 leads a month. And the guy said, I said, how many cases you signed? He said, maybe 3. And I said, and so what I did was I did some ghost calls and recorded them. And bless his heart, he was terrible. I mean, his people were terrible.
Yeah.
But that's what happens. I guarantee you that's what happened to you. You said, I'll fix this. I'll start my own intake department.
We would run mass tort cases back in the day, right? We'd run a mass tort campaign. We'd see tons of phone calls all going to the law firm. And we'd think, oh my God, it must have done great. 3 weeks later, they would fire us. They'd say, oh, it was terrible. We didn't get any cases. No, thank you. And we would started recording the calls, the same as you. We'd listen to the experience, and we'd realize we're getting fired because they don't handle any of the phone calls. And then they just chalked it up to we weren't doing our job. So that's exactly why, that's the genesis behind why we started the call center. And then to take it one step further, Ken, we start a call center, we would answer, qualify, and then this is really more for mass torts. So then we would send the qualified to the firm and say, hey, these are qualified, get a contract out, get it back, sign them. And we call them a month later and say, so how's everything going? They're saying it's terrible. The campaign was horrific. We can't get any contracts back. I've gotten 3 back out of it, 50. I'm just making that up as an example. So we're not going to renew or do anything with you again because we can't get contracts back. And then we literally would hang up and take a note, go, okay, we got to start a contract, processing center. And so, yes, that's why we like to take control over best practices so we can help law firms in areas where they don't have the expertise. I think law firms, I'm surprised to hear your scenario. I'm not surprised, but most law firms are very good, I feel like these days, at doing intakes on their single event calls that come in during normal office hours. And maybe I'm being naive, and there's just as many that are not. But I know, the firms that are really trying to grow their business are spending a lot of time on managing that initial intake, right? So they have better conversion than 3 cases out of 300 calls or whatever your example is. Yeah, that's terrible.
Yeah. So your newest thing is, well, first I want to talk about this. Yeah. So, we're going through COVID as we just, talked about because of the summit. But what have you seen anything change? Are you seeing more signups, DocuSign or on text or whatever? I mean, what are you all doing? You got a call center, you're getting these contracts in. What are you seeing? Is anything changed? Are you seeing a bigger percentage come in a different way?
Well, that's a good question. Early in COVID, we did. It was all digital. It just spiked. Everything was digital, everything we were doing, because if you look at the behaviors early in COVID, everybody was online or watching TV, right? So viewership of TV was at record, highs. Web activity was at a record high. Everybody was home. I mean, it was nuts, right? The streets were empty. Remember? I mean, now it seems like so long ago, but the streets it was crazy, ghost town. And so, yes, we saw all our numbers spike. Calls, response, campaigns, actually everything even did better because for the same amount of money that we were buying media, viewership was so much higher, if that makes sense, right? So you got more eyeballs for the same price. So that's calmed down. That's normalized now. It's not negative. It's just normal pre-COVID numbers now. But we're still seeing a higher percentage of digital electronic signing. It depends on the target audience, right? So if we're dealing with an older demographic, if the injured, I'm going to make this up, if it's asbestos or lung cancer or some kind of injury that involves someone over 60 or 65 or 70, then they're probably still going to want paper documents going back and forth. And so we have a lot of campaigns we're running now that are, super high tech, all digital. The whole audience is digital, and so very little is offline. So it varies, but we're seeing definitely an increase since COVID till now. Yeah.
So tell me about this new division, this PR, because number one, I'd like to know what prompted you to start it, and then I kind of wanted you to explain what you do and why it's important.
Yeah, and thank you. And we couldn't be more excited about this. I love when we get an idea and we think about it and even share it with other people and they go, oh my gosh, like, wow, like, duh, like that's a great idea because it's such an open space of nobody is offering a service that makes sense. And so it goes back to Mike Papantonio with Levin Papantonio, with many people know. His show's next week, MTMP, and he's, well known for the mass tort community. Mike called me a while ago. His firm is really active in human sex trafficking, and they're about to file lawsuits against a variety of properties, very big companies who are involved at some level, allegedly in the human trafficking problem. And so he's been involved in tobacco and opioids, and he's made a difference in the world on helping improve things. And they're taking the same approach with human sex trafficking. So he called me and said, Steve, we do a lot of work with him. He said, Steve, why don't you help me do public relations for our human sex trafficking? And I said, Mike, that's so sweet. Thank you. But we don't do PR. And he's like, well, maybe you should. I'll be your first customer. So we got to looking at the industry and PR. And I'll tell you, I think to me, the word public relations is a negative. It has sort of a negative connotation in my mind. Ken, I don't know if you feel the same way. Meaning, like, you think of public relations and historically, an event might happen. You tell your PR people, they put out a press release, and otherwise you're paying them a retainer and you're really not getting a lot of proactive services, right? It's more of reactive if something happens. So it's never really utilized the right way, I think, ever, let alone for law firms. And so we decide, me and my crazy innovations, I said, let's totally disrupt the PR business. Let's innovate what PR is and then take it to law firms, because it could actually be the best advertising they do for, for the cost. And so we've created what we call proactive PR, which is this never-ending production of content and writing and creating news and stories around everything the law firm's doing, from new hires to the lawyers to the public service and charity work they're doing, to verdicts, to cases they're working on, to what makes a difference. There's plenty to write about. And what's compelling, we're trying to get coverage with local, press, papers, digital news. And so we're working on engagements, we're working on press releases, but we're also just writing content. So even if it doesn't get covered by the press, by integrating the content into all their social and digital systems and their website, It creates links that Google looks at as an authority, and it'll help their SEO. It'll have more people, find them as a thought leader in their community, or if it's national. And so our whole approach to PR is this never-ending production of content and good ideas and writing about the firm and getting it in the community. It's unlike anything that in my mind, that PR was ever before. And I think PR, this is, to me, intuitively, this is what PR should be. This actually starts making sense for law firms as a way to, to have others write about what they're doing, right? Which is they can advertise, but then this is really more marketing and having people cover them. So we've launched it, and we couldn't be more excited about having a different kind of service, not real expensive, and I don't think firms really think about PR. I mean, I'm curious what you think, Ken, but I don't think like PR firms don't look at it like like a tool to really compete, right? If you look at the competitors in their market, no one's doing what I'm describing as proactive PR. So what a nice way to sort of sweep in under the competition and start getting their name all over their market.
Yeah, I mean, I've preached for years that, if you can get quoted in a newspaper or get interviewed on a TV, it can be worth millions. It can definitely be worth hundreds of thousands. I remember this has got to be 15 years ago, Steve. I was at a mass torts conference, MTMP, the one we're going to next week. And we were doing, trying to think of I don't remember the case. I think it might have been, I don't know. It's so long ago. But I was out there, and somebody from the Raleigh News and Observer, which is the biggest Raleigh newspaper in Raleigh, North Carolina, where my law firm was at, and want to know about this mass tort. And I said, sure. I said, because I'm there at the mass tort conference. Right. She said, well, can I interview you tomorrow morning? I said, yeah, what you going to ask? So I go and find the experts and all the guys that are leading the litigation. I ask them all the questions, get everything down. She interviews me for about maybe 5-10 minutes. But something great happened. The next day, I'm quoted in the News Observer. And I'm at the mass tort conference, and I asked this well-known attorney, Ken Hardison, about this drug or whatever. And we probably got 100 calls. Yeah. Now you're the authority. Just for being quoted, because it gives you credibility. You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying. Yes. And that's the idea which you could use. That example could be used for any auto accident, med mal, birth injury, social security disability, any kind of law. I have a big mass tort firm that called us this week and wants nationally to have a lot of news written up on them for 2 of the new mass torts, because it'll get them looked at in the country as leadership. What a new idea for law firms that are doing mass torts. And then I'll tell you, so Ken, this week, this week we had, maybe it was the end of last week, we had an oil spill in Southern California. I don't know if you know about it, but Orange County, it's terrible. It's a disaster. And there's oil all over now, the beautiful beaches of Southern California. It's going to be there for a while. It just happened. And in fact, yesterday, the news came out that even showed that the folks that caused where the spill happened knew about it like 12 hours before they reported it. So it even could have, the response and help could have been quicker, maybe made it not quite as bad. So there are going to be lawyers, all over this trying to help the businesses that are going to get impacted for who knows how long. I think there's like 30,000 businesses in the area that might be impacted. And so I got calls from at least 3 or 4 different firms. How fast can you do? We're going to file lawsuits. How fast can you do PR for us on the suits being filed and what happened in that market? And so we're getting that all over the country now on events and news and things that are happening, and the early adopters that are trying to jump out fast, right, and actually take a leadership position. So I can give you, 100 scenarios of how the right kind of PR, so PR done the way I described, can be really helpful for a firm. And yours is, I can't tell how many folks have already told the stories, Ken, just like you, which is they got an article written for them about something in particular in law, and maybe they signed one case or a few, but the cases were worth a huge amount that settled. And so the ROI on PR, if you can get a little bit of coverage, is probably significant.
Yeah, because if you can get quoted in news, it's just, or in something that's trusted, you're going to get, it's just.
Yeah, but Ken, isn't interesting? There's no such thing. No one talks about PR in our industry. You tell me there's no vendors that was at your conference last week, or there'll be no vendors at MTMP that are doing PR. And I'll tell you, so here's a key, not just doing PR, but understanding law firms, right? So imagine a PR agency that actually understands like the nuances of law. And I feel like we do. We've been working with lawyers for, over a decade. And so, yeah, I think the need was like, wow, like what a way not to take PR as it historically is, because I think that would have been a yawner. I don't think that might be helpful, but not like I'm describing. And so, yeah, the early response has been nothing but spectacular. I know Mike's going to talk about it next week at the conference in front of the whole, group on Wednesday. Him and I are going to talk about what we're doing with human trafficking and how PR can help everybody make a difference.
We're getting close to the end, but I want you to tell us about your legal marketing index, because I like that.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, thank you for asking about that. So the LMI, we call it Legal Marketing Index, right? We do a few. We do one every month for mass torts, gets updated every month with new metrics. We do one for personal injury, which covers most of the large practice areas like, auto, med mal, birth injury, social security, catastrophic injury, and so trucking. And so what it is, so here's so if you go back and look at all our divisions, actually, I'll go back even further if I can tell a very quick story. When I got out of high school, I started a computer business. I'll even date myself for everybody, in '86. And I started a computer company that we sold to a public company in '95. And then I ran that division till '99. That's what I did the first, 15 years or so out of college. I was in the computer services space before I jumped into marketing, but I was always in an entrepreneurial position. And it was a great computer business. Anyways, the most credible companies in the computer space were these companies that produced data and benchmark like stats for the computer industry. Like everybody, you just had this intuitive trust for the companies that produced data. And so early in CAMG's life, when we were answering calls, doing intakes, running the ads, seeing where it works, and, doing everything, I mean, so much you start thinking about the data you have, what works, what station, what time, who calls, men or women, what age, by each litigation. I mean, I can go on and on. And then we have a med records business. You can imagine now, like how many records vetted out, which device, what type. It's exhausting. And so we made the choice a long time ago, we should publish this data and make it available at no cost to the industry and break it out by, like I said, mass tort, single event. And then we have different other specials we do for asbestos or other breakout things for mass torts. And so that's what the LMI is. It's an aggregation of data that we think is, some of it's, useful. Some of it's just fun to look at because we're all in the same industry. I think our competitors love it because they can look at it and see what networks and what stations, and they must still say every week, we cannot believe CMG is just publishing this data. But we decided just like keep running, like publish it, let everybody see it and use it if it's helpful. We use it, it's helpful for us as we manage the campaigns. So folks can go to our website and sign up. You can get it digitally every month. If they see us at a show, yeah, we have it. We have hard copies, but you can just get it on our website, and then we'll send you the updates every month. It's great.
What's your website?
It's it's CAMGINC.com. So
okay, great.
CAMGINC.com. Yeah, and then we also have the ethics stuff there. Just to make a note, Ken, for firms, every single state's advertising rules are updated in real time in there. And there's a white paper we've written that gets updated every quarter on the risks and what to look out for when you deal with lead aggregators. There's a lot of pitfalls. Ethics has become a big topic. I'm seeing law firms get nailed with suits that they don't even know who the vendors are because they have a vendor who's using other vendors. And now they're tied into this, and the drill. So I suggest anybody go to our website as well. You'll see very easy to find where those papers are and download the white paper and look at that. Dealing with lead generators from written by ethics lawyers.
What best advice, in closing, what best advice can you give lawyers as far as trying to grow their practices?
Well, I tell you, I mean, that's a loaded, do we have another hour?
Yeah.
No, I'll tell you. So what I did, so it's differentiating in your marketplace. So here's a couple of key things I think. If you're using an agency or you're buying your media, let's say for TV, and you're doing what I call, set it and forget it, right? If you're just buying and you're doing this shotgun branding approach, you shouldn't scratch your head and wonder why your case costs are getting higher or too high. You have to know what you're running and what works, or you don't know which half isn't maybe working and what to change, right? We already do that on digital side. We use Google Analytics. On SEM, we look at pay-per-click and what's working. We should be doing the same thing on our outdoor boards, radio, TV. We have to get scientific or you're not going to compete. We've been running, Ken, I think you've heard me talk about it. We run a half-hour infomercial now, which has been the best thing we've run for firms. I cannot tell you enough times, or when I talk about it, my background was the half hour. So we started shooting half-hour shows for lawyers to run in their local market. We break it out into segments. There's like an ESPN ticker on one side that shows you what's coming next. We do it for mass torts, sex abuse, asbestos, and it gives the lawyers, it gives you a chance more than 30 or 60 seconds to connect with your community and talk about things that you think that they want to hear more about. And it's uninterrupted. We even put the law firm's commercials in the breaks. And so it's just trying to compete and be different. So I've mentioned a few things on this podcast with you, right? About just competing, whether it's PR or it's running a half-hour program or it's measuring what works so you can make smart decisions. It's very hard to compete as it is. So SEO, we're big believers in SEO, Ken. We have an insane SEO group. It's a long-term investment. I think firms should do it because it's not just like running media. You're building and you're owning the asset that you're going to score high and show up on rankings. It's interesting when firms do a search of how they rank in their local market on just natural SEO, they don't really look at, if you look at your market and you imagine every 5 miles and you draw a square, let's say around your office, your whole DMA, your whole market, your ranking could be number 1, 2, or 3 in some areas, which you want. It could be 20 or 20 plus or 30 or 40. You don't even show up in other areas in your own market. And so we do that audit. It's a free SEO audit to help law firms see how do they even score on their natural SEO in their markets. So people should call us just to get a free audit. So we innovated, right? I think I told you, before we talked, during COVID, we kept coming up with new programs to help firms compete. It's too many to talk about on this podcast, but there's ways to do it. You don't just arm wrestle and overspend firms like Morgan, who are in half the markets that Ken, your base of friends and family are dealing with. And so
yeah.
We know
you're not going to believe this, Steve. In 2003, I did a 30-minute infomercial on. I did 2. I did one on Social Security.
Yeah.
Now I didn't. What I did, I took my book and I got a newscaster to interview me about the book, and then I offered the book, and then when they got the book, I did a follow-up campaign.
Good idea. Yeah.
And it really did work. It really did. And I did it down here in Myrtle Beach when I come down here.
Yeah.
And started Social Security practice. I did it down here, and it killed it. I was getting cases for like $150.
You have it. You should show it at a conference. You should do the opening and show a little bit of you back in the day. I know you had some videos last week when you were younger where you grew up, and I saw some of that, but that's interesting. Yeah. The infomercial still, the problem is no one, very few people know how to produce it, and buying media is a different animal than buying normal TV. So, that's all normal for us, but yeah, they work. I mean, I can tell you because we watch the calls, right? We know what works and what doesn't. So I'm a big, and you could really bring in doctors, judges, ex-attorney generals. You could, you could really mix up testimonials, who's in it, how you do it. It's this creative open landscape. It's amazing. Yeah.
Well, good deal.
Yeah.
So if people want to get up with you, and you already give your website, but if people want to find out more about you and what you can do to help them, how's the best way to get up with your team? Yeah,
you can. So you can call 800-200-CAMG is our phone number. You can call my cell phone, 818-917-8755, 818-917-8755. Everyone can email me. It's just steve@camginc.com. So you can send me, reach out. We have a big sales team. They're all over the country. So we, figure out who the best person is to help talk through this. But we're excited about the industry. I'll tell you, it's full steam ahead. So I hope everybody feels the same way.
Yeah, well, I do. Yeah. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time. I'm glad we were able to get together, and look forward to seeing you probably next week at
Minnesota. See you in Vegas. And Ken, great conference. You and your team, just for everybody, great conference last week. You guys killed it in a time that it's not so easy to do. So thanks for doing that.
Thank you. Thank you for participating and contributing.
Oh, yeah.
All right. Until next time, this is Ken Hardison, dedicated to your success.
You have been listening to the Grow Your Law Firm podcast, the podcast that leads lawyers to more growth, profit, and freedom. Go to growyourlawfirm.com to find more ways to market and manage your law firm. Please leave us a rating and review wherever you listen to your podcasts.